And some taxes lowered to save our summer. But the boss of the world's energy agency has issued a stern warning.
I will be very careful for the European governments and the UK government to go back and knock on the door of Russia.
There's been anger in Kyiv over the UK's decision to pause its boycott of Moscow's oil. The Prime Minister says he had to act because of the cost of living crisis. But after a phone call last night, Ukraine's president has cancelled his trip to London. Also coming up,
Free Palestine!
One of the activists who tried to take aid to Gaza describes extreme violence by Israeli prison guards.
We saw various types of violence being committed, and they were refusing any kind of medical assistance. There was very, very cramped conditions. This time they did not give us any mattresses, any blankets. They took warm clothes off all of us, so it was extremely cold.
Plus, will California vote to ban so-called killer kitchens? We're going to be live in Los Angeles. And South Africa's cash in the sofa corruption scandal. We'll hear from the man who could bring down the president. That's all coming up on The World with me, Barbara Serra. Good evening. Now, imagine this. You're dealing with an escalating cost of living crisis, rising fuel prices, the real prospect of families being unable to go on their summer holidays. And all because the movement of oil and gas in the Middle East has largely ground to a halt. And this is how the impact of one war between the US and Iran is affecting the victims of another in Ukraine. Keir Starmer's solution to delay sanctions on crude oil from Moscow that is refined in other places has provoked anger in Kyiv.
It's not good news, I would say, because I think we need to apply the sanctions as they have been decided, and we need to limit the capacity of Russia to continue this war. And the way to do it is to apply the sanctions that have been decided.
I'm not into politics much, but I think it's really necessary for us to keep the pressure on Russia.
It's an unfortunate circumstance, but my hope is that it's actually just temporary.
Well, they may have been smiling then, but not anymore. Overnight, Ukraine's president was diplomatic in public, but he is cancelling his next planned trip to the UK in protest. So despite the Prime Minister and the Chancellor's attempts to save our summer,
these measures, taking VAT down from 20% to 5% on summer activities for the kids, and also VAT down on children's meals in restaurants, cafes, hotels, down from 20% to 5%, helps the sector that has been struggling and also helps families.
This is about recognising that people want some support to know, can I pay the bills each month? And also, can I just enjoy those things which go beyond just paying the bills and allow me to have a bit of a nice time with my family?
Well, the optics of the UK importing Russian oil are concerning. And that's why the boss of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, is insisting it should last no longer than a few weeks. I spoke to him a little earlier. Have a listen to our conversation.
The world, therefore Europe, UK, we are facing a major challenge, which is the availability of oil and especially some products, including jet fuels. And it is normal that the countries are taking some steps, some measures in order to alleviate this pain in their economies and comfort their markets. I can understand that the UK or other countries can take some immediate short-term measures to comfort their markets, to secure their markets, but we should be very careful. Those should be temporary and not permanent, because Russia is one of the beneficiaries of this very crisis. Russian oil revenues in a very short period of time more than doubled, and the UK, other European countries, and most of the members of the international community know that Russia is is not a very innocent country, and we have seen in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine and the resulting energy crisis in Europe and beyond.
But so in light of that, do you agree with the British government's decision to soften the sanctions, or do you worry it's going to send a message as you know, the pressure, the economic pressure gets heavier and heavier?
I very much hope that it's a temporary and a very short-term measure, and it wouldn't open the doors for looking at Russia as important as it was before, energy importer for Europe or UK. But I am very sure that the UK government does not consider this as a permanent solution, but a temporary short-term solution to comfort its market.
When you say short-term, what could that mean?
I think it's a very short-term, maybe a couple of weeks, because the problem is today, the major headache is the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and it is creating a big risk for the global energy system and global economy, including the UK.
What did you make of Ukraine's reaction? Understandably quite angry.
Of course, Ukraine is aware that this money Russia is going to get from UK or from other countries may not be good news when the Ukrainians are defending their homeland.
You had said back in December that Europe's dependence on Russian energy is effectively gone. That chapter is closed. Do you still stand by that, that dependency on Russian energy is effectively gone?
Of course, when you look at the numbers, I look at the numbers, the amount of energy Europe is importing from Russia, oil, gas, coal, it declined substantially.
Well, the current pressure right now that seems to be around the corner is on jet fuel. And again, in mid-April, you warned that Europe maybe had 6 weeks of jet fuel left. I mean, we're not quite at 6 weeks, but nearly. Do you stand by that comment? Where'd you put the timeline?
Yes, we said that if the countries continue their policies in a 6 weeks of time, European jet fuel markets will be squeezed substantially. And right after that, several airline companies, they have reduced their flights substantially. But in the meantime, countries changed their policies, and they have now imported a lot of jet fuel from United States and from Nigeria. It gives a certain comfort for some time, but this is not a solution to the problem, because Europe was getting about 75% of its jet fuel from Middle East, and it stopped from one day to another. So with some domestic policies, the change in the refinery configuration in Europe, getting some jet fuel from United States and Nigeria, now the situation seems to be rather manageable for some weeks to come, but it is not a permanent solution at all.
But so do you think that holiday flights, for example, with the summer months, at least in Europe coming up, do you think that those are under threat?
They are definitely under threat of being much more expensive. The cost.
Flights being cancelled?
Some of them already announced, the companies, they have been cancelled some flights, some destinations, but we will see whether or not these imports from US and Nigeria will continue.
I mean, there obviously are a lot of uncertainties still.
Yes.
Do you think that the whole issue has been underestimated by governments, the British government, other European governments?
I think it is not the British government. Most of the governments, I should say, underestimated this. It is the reason why I labeled this situation as the largest energy crisis in the history, so that we understand what a big challenge we are facing now. And it is not only for energy, it is also for the food, agriculture sector and others. It's a major economic threat for the time being.
All of this, of course, as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, there is a very tenuous ceasefire, and, you know, heaven knows how long that might hold. How significant do you think a resumption of that conflict, not just the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but a resumption of the conflict, how damaging would that be to energy?
Very much so. It is even if it is opened tomorrow, it will leave major scars on the global energy system.
Regardless what happens around the Strait of Hormuz and the war between Iran, Israel and the US, do you think there's any going back to before that conflict, or do you think it's fundamentally changed the global energy system?
I think what I see is that the Hormuz Strait was, this is perhaps one of the, if not the most important trade route for Asia, for Europe. About 20% of oil and gas went through this strait, And it is now, there was attack. The vase is broken. If it is broken once, it is very difficult to put it together again. And I wouldn't be surprised if many countries in the region would think of building new pipelines, just bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. It will take some time. And some countries like UK that are importing energy from the region will look at other options in the map.
All of that, both the rebuilding of structures and looking at other viable options, takes a lot of time, which arguably a lot of countries don't have. What would your warning be to governments that are considering a possible return to Russian oil and gas precisely because the situation on the Strait of Hormuz continues to be so unstable?
I mean, before this, we had another crisis, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the gas prices skyrocketed, electricity prices, oil prices. So, and we should think why it happened. Why it happened is there was an over-reliance on Russia, and thinking that Russia will never cut the gas, never cut the oil, and Russia will not use energy as a weapon. And Russia did. So once it is done, like the case of Hormuz, I don't see any reason why it cannot be done again. So I will be very careful for the European governments and the UK government to go back and knock on the door of Russia to be, again, a significant importer to their economies. I will be very careful.
Do you worry that that might happen?
I didn't hear this in the UK, to be honest with you. I talked with the...
well, but they are softening their sanctions.
I would say this is an emergency measure, which is, it comes and goes. But I talk with the UK government all the time. To be very frank, I don't see any vibes in that respect. But in some countries in Europe, I see some thoughts. Shall we knock on the door of Russia again? In my view, we did once. It was a major mistake, over-reliance on Russia. And if we do it second time, it will not be a mistake.
And for more on this, I'm joined now by Yuri Sak, who was advisor to Ukraine's defense minister. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. You will have heard the conversation I was just having there with the head of the International Energy Agency. The same question to you, really. What is your reaction to the UK softening its sanctions, you could say, on Russian origin oil?
Good evening, Barbara. I think my reaction is similar to the reaction of all Ukrainians, and I think the best way to describe it is bewilderment, probably disbelief to some extent, because we know that the United Kingdom has always been one of the most active supporters of Ukraine from the beginning of the large-scale invasion. The UK was the first one to give us, for example, tanks. The UK was instrumental, actually, in creating the architecture of international sanctions. And we continue to believe, and we are confident, that whatever that move was now, this will not impact the relationship between the Ukraine and the United Kingdom. Having said that, we of course understand that the situation in Iran and Strait of Hormuz imposes certain economic difficulties on countries who are our allies. So we understand very well the economic rationale behind this decision. But again, if we listen carefully to how this move was explained by Sir Keir Starmer in the Parliament, for example, yesterday, maybe it is just phasing in more sanctions, which we hope it will be.
We heard from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Lucy Rigby, a little earlier. She said that this is not going soft on Putin. And the Prime Minister himself said we're doing it so that we can manage the impact on the economy. So not going soft on Putin, but how do you think this will be welcomed in Russia?
For quite some time now, we here in Ukraine, we know very well that there is only one way to stop this war. Russia will never stop fighting Ukraine, will never cease its aggression against our country voluntarily. No amount of peace talks will bring that to fruition. However, what can be effective and what always has been effective is more sanctions by the international partners. At the same time, Ukraine is imposing what our president, Mr. Zelensky, calls long-term or deep strike sanctions on a daily basis. And we do that in order to disrupt Russian oil machinery, because Russian oil machinery is actually funding Russian war machinery. So from that perspective, of course, Russia understands that it cannot win this war militarily. So the only chance it stands is winning this attrition war by outlasting Ukraine economically in particular. So any move by any government that gives Russia an opportunity to continue to get profits from oil and gas, of course, extends this war. And that's why we hope that the sanctions regime will get tougher, and we will do what we have to on our part, but at the same time we hope that our alliances will do on their part. And look, if we just think back 2 weeks, we saw how King Charles stood in the houses of Congress in the United States of America, and he was supporting Ukraine. And to paraphrase him, I think many Ukrainians will now say that our allies have now to rededicate themselves to the sanctions regime, because that is the only way to stop this war.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer did say that the UK remains steadfast in its support for Ukraine. But of course, all of this is happening against the backdrop of what's happening in the Middle East, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the pressure on energy coming from there. And the way things look now, it doesn't look like it's going to end or resolve itself anytime soon. So do you worry about potentially other EU nations, for example, other European nations also going this way of, allegedly temporarily suspending or changing some sanctions? Do you worry about cracks in the Western alliance when it comes to Ukraine because of this pressure from the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, of course, we hope that this will not be a domino effect where, other countries will follow suit and will continue to ease sanctions, because it is not in the interest of the European countries to make Russia stronger, because by making Russia stronger, they make Ukraine weaker. Now, at the same time, of course, there are other things that can be done by our allies, the United Kingdom in particular. For example, if some temporary lift of some sanctions on LNG and jet fuel or diesel have to be done, then at the same time, give us long-range Storm Shadows missiles so that we can impose our deep strike sanctions more effectively. But we have to understand, and this is something that will not change, Russia will not stop until it is stopped and until its economy comes to a grudging standstill. We have seen that Russian economy is struggling at the moment. They have a serious banking crisis. They are for the last 5 months they've been losing on the front lines more soldiers than they are able to recruit. So the momentum is definitely there, and it would be a shame to actually give Russia, a bit of lax at this time through easing sanctions.
Yuri Sak, former advisor to Ukraine's defense minister and strategic industries minister. Sir, thank you for sharing your views with us.
Thank you so much.
Now, he's seen as a hero in Russia, and he's been branded a traitor by the UK. So why did an antiques dealer from Oldham decide to fight for Vladimir Putin? Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett met Ben Stimson to find out.
In Britain, he's seen as a terrorist. In Russia, he's hailed as a hero. He is the antiques trader from Oldham who went to fight for Vladimir Putin.
I'm a soldier. I stand by my beliefs that what I've done is the right thing to do.
In his first interview with British media, Ben Stimson denied being a traitor to the UK.
Some in Britain have called you a traitor. How do you respond to that? Are you a traitor?
I have not seen any declaration of war from either side, so I'm not a traitor. Britain is the land of my birth. I'm not a traitor to Britain. I've still got a lot of friends in Britain. I've still got family in Britain. I'm not a traitor to the British people.
The 50-year-old British national signed a contract with the Russian military in 2024. He served for more than a year in what he says were non-combat roles.
Did you fire any weapons?
I can guarantee you I've killed nobody. No, I've never shot at anybody knowingly.
We're off to Donbass.
But this wasn't Stimson's first time in Ukraine. In 2015, he spent 4 months in the Donbass with pro-Moscow militia. On returning to Britain back then, he was convicted of a terror offence and jailed for more than 5 years.
Maybe I would have been better just going on protests in London and marching, but no, I chose to sign up for the militia in 2015 because I thought, and I still believe, I was protecting the people of the Donbass, the ethnic Russian people, for their identity, their language, and the evidence is there that the West interfered during the Maidan, and that's what I stand by.
The West sees things differently, of course.
Oh, Donetsk is my favourite city in Russia.
And so does Stimson's family, who cut ties with him after he joined Russia's full-scale invasion.
I have to accept my decisions. Of course I'd like to speak to my father again, but it's not going to happen. That's his decision.
So just to be clear, Russia and its war in Ukraine, that is worth more to you than contact with your family?
As a principled man, yes.
Having served in the military, Stimson was able to acquire Russian citizenship earlier this year.
I'm happy to finally receive Russian citizenship. My future is in Russia.
If he does return to the UK, he'll almost certainly be arrested. The Foreign Office declined a request for comment, but its travel advice states, if you travel to Russia to join the Russian army or to help others engaged in the war with Ukraine, you could be breaking UK laws. You could be prosecuted when you return to the UK.
Thank you to the Communist Party, the Russian Federation.
The question for the UK government is, how many other Britons are fighting for Russia? According to Stimson, it's more than you think. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
And on this week's podcast, we're going to focus on how technology is changing the frontline in Ukraine. Just scan the QR code on your screen to listen now. You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Still to come, concerns continue to grow after more than 600 suspected cases of Ebola are reported in Central Africa.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Let's go to Central Africa now, where at least 130 people have died and 600 suspected cases have been reported in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. The UK is sending £20 million in aid funding, as well as experimental vaccines developed by researchers at Oxford. But scientists are concerned that aid cuts, porous borders and conflict could accelerate the spread. Here's our science correspondent, Thomas Moore.
The Ebola outbreak has spread far and fast, and doctors are playing catch-up. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday there were more than 650 confirmed or suspected cases and at least 139 deaths. But there are likely to be many more people affected. The disease, which causes a high fever and severe bleeding, is caused by a family of viruses. It's the Bundibojo virus that's now spreading in Central Africa. It's much rarer than the Zaire virus that causes most Ebola outbreaks. And because there is no rapid diagnostic test for the Bundibojo microbe, the outbreak went undetected, possibly for several weeks. Here's what we know about the spread so far. The first known case was a nurse in the Democratic Republic of Congo who developed symptoms on April the 24th. It's not known yet whether they were patient zero, the first human infected, or whether they picked it up from a patient they treated. But genetic analysis of the virus has shown there was likely to have been just one spillover event, with a mammal, most likely a fruit bat, infecting a human. The outbreak soon took off. The nurse's body was taken from where they died in Bunia, the capital of Ituri province, to the gold mining town of Mungwalu, where their funeral is thought to have been a super spreader event. Most of the cases have been reported there and in nearby Wampara. But the disease has also been reported in Butembo, Nkundi, Goma and across the border with Uganda in the capital Kampala. The virus is so widespread now that doctors have lost sight of all the complex chains of transmission, making it harder to quarantine contacts.
We expect those numbers to keep increasing, given the amount of time the virus was circulating before the outbreak was detected. Second, the epidemic has expanded with cases reported in several urban areas. Third, deaths have been reported among health workers, indicating healthcare-associated transmission.
So here's the challenge. First, there is no specific treatment or vaccine for the Bundibojo virus, though there is a jab against the Zaire strain that caused the Ebola epidemic in West Africa a decade ago. It could give some protection. Second, the outbreak is in a conflict zone with millions of people displaced, and it's difficult for health teams to work in. Running clinical trials needed for vaccines or drugs could be tricky. And third, the borders in the region are porous, with people crossing between countries for work and other reasons, potentially spreading the virus further. This is the DRC's 17th Ebola outbreak. It has experienced public health teams, but this time cases are rising so fast that without international help, they could be outpaced by a virus that kills a third of those it infects.
Coming up next on The World, I'm going to hear from a pro-Palestinian activist who was detained in Israel and has now arrived back in Europe after being deported.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Go to South Africa now, where they call it the cash in the sofa scandal, and it could yet bring down the president. Cyril Ramaphosa is to face an impeachment committee after allegations that he covered up a 2020 break-in at his private ranch and the theft of more than $500,000. Opposition leader Julius Malema, who led calls for impeachment, said presidential officials are more focused on corruption's get-rich-quick schemes. He's been speaking to our Africa correspondent, Yusra Bagir.
A ruling from South Africa's apex court has put the president, parliament and ruling party in jeopardy.
How does it feel winning?
After a court case propelled by the opposition has initiated impeachment proceedings that will investigate over $500,000 of cash stashed in President Ramaphosa's couch. All this led by the man the African National Congress expelled over a decade ago, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, Julius Malema. 10 years ago, you won a landmark case against Jacob Zuma in the Constitutional Court, and then he later resigned. Are you applying the same formula to President Ramaphosa?
Absolutely, and you know, I'm a gentleman. If you resign, I look the other way, because the highest form of punishment you can give to a sitting president is to make sure he doesn't finish his term. So once you are done with that, you can leave him to go and enjoy life as an old man, and life goes on, and we continue to serve our people with the leadership that is not corrupt. You've
Faced corruption charges before. Do you hold yourself and your party to a different standard than you hold the president and the ANC?
That comparison is comparing apples and bananas, because there's only one president of South Africa, and those high standards are applied at the president of South Africa. If that debate starts in the EFF and say get removed from the position, then I'll be removed by the membership of the EFF. And I was never found guilty of any corruption. I was found guilty for discharging a political responsibility.
Why do you think corruption has become such a big part of the political scene here?
Well, corruption is it's a quick, rich thing, because the people who now occupy political office, they bring with themselves nothing except corruption. They possess no skill, they possess no credentials, and credential would have confirmed that these are people who are committed to our people and they love our people. So their love for money makes them to even ignore the most basic things.
We've seen anti-immigration marches across South Africa, even here in downtown Johannesburg. What do you make of them?
It's clownish, stupid. There is no xenophobia in South Africa. It's just a group of charlatans, extortionists, disruptors, corrupt individuals who want to extort the foreign nationals.
But is that not xenophobia targeting African foreign nationals?
That's why it's not xenophobia. It's gangsterism. It's sponsored by government. The government is fully involved to distract our people from major issues. How can an ordinary person manhandle a man in front of the police? Because it's a crime on its own. Let's go and check the cases of rape. Who raped South African women? South African men. Who beats up South African children? South African men. Majority of the prisoners there It's not Zimbabwe, it's not Ghana, it's not Nigeria. It's not DRC. It's South African men.
And you've said about South Africa, we are still a traumatized nation and that trauma is real. What does a free, healed South Africa look like to you?
Well, it will take a generation. It will not, we can go to therapists and all of that. What they can do is to give us money, those who colonized us and sponsored apartheid. There must be reparations for the victims of apartheid.
Julius Malema and his party are staying on the pulse of South Africa's grievances, with diminishing proximity to the seat of power, but well positioned to overturn it. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, Johannesburg.
There was global outrage this week after a senior Israeli minister was pictured taunting activists who tried to deliver aid to Gaza. Well, in the past few hours, the first of the detainees have landed back in Europe after being deported. I spoke to one of them who described what she called huge levels of violence. That conversation is coming up after this report from our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons.
They aimed for Gaza but landed in Istanbul. The activists whose flotilla of small boats was intercepted by Israel and who were then subject to detention, restraint and to this. The taunts of National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who marched among the activists, mocking and insulting them. His actions have drawn global outrage.
I mean, we see these totally disgraceful scenes in this video shared by Israeli Cabinet Minister Ben-Gvir, which shows a total disrespect and violation of basic standards of human dignity.
The activists were arrested at sea in a coordinated military action before being brought to detention in Israel. Malcolm Ducker, a former fighter pilot, is among this group. His daughter, Claire, watched in shock.
The video, I felt physically sick, and I had to call a friend to help counsel me through before I could finish watching it. Well, first off, say we're incredibly proud of him. Certainly is risky. And despite that, despite knowing the risk to their personal safety, these people sail. And they sail because their humanity, their love for humanity is so deep, deeper than their rage against the world.
Free Palestine!
Activists have complained of being beaten and humiliated. Some are considering legal action. Ben-Gvir is famous for provocative, unapologetic extremism, but this time was different. Israeli ambassadors were summoned in various countries. Diplomatic anger was vented. Even Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, said Ben-Gvir had gone too far. But the people behind the flotilla told us that it was too easy to pile all the blame onto just one person.
There's a lot of statements coming out from Netanyahu and others acting as though Ben-Gvir is some kind of isolated incident. And the reality is he is a symptom. He is not the entire cancer here. He is a part of an entire system that has existed in this way for far too long.
The irony here may be that Ben-Gvir's actions have served only to embarrass Israel and to put a focus back upon Gaza, where millions of people still live in ruins and face a humanitarian crisis, as well as a chronic lack of food and aid. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, Irish activist Katrina Graham shouted "Free Palestine" in that video released by Ben-Gvir that Adam had in his report. Her head was immediately shoved to the ground by a guard. When she landed in Istanbul, she told me what it was like.
So we had been kidnapped in international waters. We were kept for about 2 days on what we're calling a prison boat that was set up especially for this purpose. There were 2 prison boats that were used. We know that on one of the prison boats, pretty much everybody that went through was brutalized as they were being brought into the main area of the prison boat. So there was huge levels of physical violence. We need to do whatever we can to raise awareness of the plight and the realities that Palestinians are facing. And when I saw Ben-Gvir passing us by when we were being processed at Ashdod Port, I did not want to stay silent in the face of everything that he has done that is absolutely horrific to the Palestinian people. So raised my voice and said free Palestine, and immediately there was a very rough crackdown and I was dragged away into isolation.
Tell us what happened to you during your detention.
So I witnessed extreme violence in the prison boat. There was very, very cramped conditions. This time they did not give us any mattresses, any blankets. They took warm clothes off all of us. So it was extremely cold. We had people shivering. We were worried about people really having a severe longer term impact because of the cold. We saw within about 20 minutes of my arrival, there was a woman who crossed a line where they hadn't mentioned anything about this line's existence, and they immediately shot her with a pellet, and we had to deal with her. We saw various types of violence being committed, and they were refusing any kind of medical assistance. We know that on the other prison boat that others were held in, that there were many, many people injured, and people were singled out from arrival without any kind of cause for beatings. And so we know that they wanted to commit this violence, and we need to show that it is unacceptable. We need to stand up against it and hold them to account.
Just tell us what it felt like and, in general, the atmosphere around there, because we saw the images of the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, walking around.
So it was definitely very tense. I mean, the previous days, anytime we were around the IOF commandos, it was very, very clear to us that they were ready to escalate. They were willing to escalate. They said things like, if you use your words, if you say free Palestine, we will use our guns. So we knew that they were willing to do whatever they needed to or they wanted to try and shut down what we are doing. And that shows that we have power. When we rise up, when we take action, we have power and we are challenging their system. So that is why I think every opportunity we get, we need to speak truth to power. And that's why for me, in seeing Ben-Gvir in that moment, it was really important to speak up and not stand there silently as he's passing by, because what he has done is absolutely horrific. What the Knesset, what the Israeli government has done and has continued to do for many decades is absolutely unacceptable.
The actions of the National Security Minister Ben-Gvir have been condemned when he was walking among you, seemingly taunting a lot of the members of the flotilla. Those actions have been condemned within Israel and, of course, outside as well. How do you feel about specifically the Israeli condemnations of his behavior?
I think they're trying to scapegoat someone who absolutely should have long ago lost his position, and the harms that he has committed are vile. But the reality is it's part of a system that Israel continues to really try to persist with as much as they possibly can. It is not one person, it is systematic. There are so many videos of Ben-Gvir going through Palestinian prisons, doing far worse, saying far worse to Palestinians, and we do not see the same condemnation. So the Israeli government, the Knesset, is very aware of how he behaves. And normally, absolutely nothing gets said. It's only when international condemnation happens that they will try to isolate one person and blame that person, when really it's the entire system that needs to end.
Your own government, the Irish government, spoke very strongly about it. Other governments as well, the Italian, for example, that tends to be quite an ally of Israel's. What have you made of that reaction?
It's great to see condemnation. It's great to see international governments speaking out against Israel. We have seen many, many years of complete impunity. And I think it's clear that that has enabled the Israeli government to take the kinds of actions they have taken against us, because they have enjoyed this kind of impunity for far too long. So it's great to see the condemnation. But what we really need to see next is sanctions, is real political action, is boycott, divestment legislation across all countries. We need to make sure that Israel is isolated for the international crimes that they continue to commit.
The image of you having your head pushed down violently is probably one of the most distinctive ones of the detention, and it's gone around the world. I'm wondering how you felt then and how you feel now about that image having been so widely shared.
I mean, I only found out upon arrival at the airport here that it had even been shared online. In that moment, I just felt the need to say something, that we should not stay silent when we are faced with people who have done these kind of horrific crimes. So it felt really important to speak up and to say something. And that was all that was going through my mind, was just, I need to say something right now. And immediately then was pushed to the ground, was dragged away and was hurt. But it was absolutely something that was important to do. And I think it's always worth it to challenge these kinds of individuals and systems of power when we have the ability to do so.
Irish activist Katrina Graham speaking to me after being deported from Israel. We asked the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces to respond to the allegations that she outlined. We've received no detailed response before we broadcast the interview. Now, earlier this month, Sky News reported on the potentially deadly impact of working with engineered stone to make kitchen worktops here in the UK. This evening, politicians in California are debating whether to ban it. The state has recorded over 560 cases of silicosis. That's an incurable lung condition linked to the quartz worktops. Katie Barnfield has this report now from Los Angeles.
This room is now Jose's world. Needing oxygen 24/7. He can't work, can't drive, can't even play with his grandchildren.
The disease is aggressive, it's unpredictable. Sometimes I don't want to see anyone, I don't want to speak to anyone. And it's all because of this.
He's one of hundreds of California workers who contracted silicosis, a deadly lung disease, from inhaling dust while cutting quartz worktops.
I have 4 children. 14 grandchildren. I've overheard conversations between them and my wife where they ask her what she's going to do when she's alone. I hold on to my faith. I ask God for more time to live.
You might have quartz worktops like these in your own kitchen. Recently, I reported on the beginning of a silicosis crisis in the UK.
I'm absolutely sure there are people who have silicosis who are unaware that they have it, walking around the UK at the moment.
In California, it has already become an epidemic. The US state has seen more than 560 diagnoses and 31 deaths from silicosis in tradesmen working with engineered stone, with 98% of all cases being Latino workers. This is Anna's husband, Victor, a countertop worker, before the silicosis took hold. 5 years ago, she lost him to the disease.
I pray here, and when I am sad, I come and speak to him. It's been 5 years, but I wish that he was still here. I miss him so much. Before he passed away, his health was terrible. At night, I was afraid that he wouldn't wake up the next morning. He was always wearing his mask, but it doesn't mean the mask could protect him. He still got the disease.
And how do you feel about this product, quartz, engineered stone, still being sold, still being used, you know, around the world?
I feel bad because this is going to happen to other families. And there are families with children, and they will be orphans without a father.
There has been a growing campaign in California for a ban on the use of engineered stone, the same move that Australia made 2 years ago. California's Occupational Health Board has been debating whether to start that process. Hi, James. Nice to meet you. I'm Katie. How are you doing? James Nevin's law firm, Brayton Purcell, is representing hundreds of silicosis patients.
Well, we started approximately 3 years ago with 20 cases. As of today, we're up to 750 clients. I mean, this is just off the charts epidemic. When it comes to high content crystalline silica artificial stone, wet methods, ventilation, mass do not work.
What would you say to the UK about what we could maybe expect coming down the line?
The silicosis that is diagnosed is the tip of the iceberg, because most of it is not getting diagnosed. The problem is so much worse than people realize. People just aren't looking.
The industry body that would meet with us is called the International Surface Fabricators Association. They represent both the manufacturers who make engineered stone and the fabricators who cut it.
I trust our industry and the ones that are doing it properly, and I trust that that the information that they're saying that it can be done safely, it is done safely. I do trust that.
But why even bother working with a product that has been proven to have a risk of silicosis when there are, like you say, zero silica alternatives available? Why even do that?
Yeah, you're trying to pigeon me into an answer. I'm not going to give you one. So, but good
why
try.
not?
Because
why
we're not?
not?
Because that's not my. Again, that is not what we're not representing the product. We're talking about licensing on behalf of the fabrication community, and you know we are product neutral.
Behind the debate over the safety of engineered stone are more and more people whose lives are being destroyed. They want the rest of the world to listen to them before it's too late.
Let's cross live now to Los Angeles, where Katie has been listening to the hearing. And Katie, I was just reading through some of the testimonies from workers and doctors of just very powerful stuff. Some saying that though they did use some health and safety measures, ultimately they didn't work.
To vote yet. They've had to extend the hearing because so many people have wanted to share their experiences here. The vast majority have been either family members or workers who've contracted silicosis themselves. And when I was in there, it was just an endless string of people saying the same thing. We did use wet cutting, we did use masks, we did use safety measures, and yet we've still contracted this disease. Now, Jose, who I spoke to in my report, actually came down to the hearing in person, still hooked up to his oxygen tank. He was begging the board to take action and to ban engineered stone. He said the disease has taken away his independence and his future and put an expiration date on his life. We also heard from several doctors who were speaking in support of banning quartz, also known as engineered stone, including Dr. Jane Fazio, who's probably one of the key doctors here in California who's treated a lot of silicosis patients. She says, I cannot stress enough, this disease is nothing like any other disease. She spoke of endless human suffering, saying she's had to train younger doctors to deal with a disease that they shouldn't have seen in their entire careers. Now, we will be hearing, of course, from many more people this afternoon who also want to share their experiences before the board can make a decision.
And Katie, just explain to us, what would the actual impact of a ban be in California?
Well, if the Occupational Health Board do vote for a ban, or at least to take steps to move towards a ban, this would be a landmark decision. It would make California only the second place in the whole world after Australia to introduce a ban on this material, quartz or engineered stone. Now, as I've been reporting, engineered stone silicosis has hit particularly hard here in California, particularly among Latino or immigrant workers. But all of the evidence that's been given today will be really stark listening for countries like the UK who still continue to use this material. In my previous reporting, I've spoken to the UK government, the Health and Safety Executive. They said that they're not in favour of a ban, and instead they favour measures like wet cutting. But as we've been hearing in this hearing this afternoon, lawyers, people who've worked with engineered stone, they say that those measures just do not work. So if a ban was to be approved here in California, it could pave the way for similar actions in other countries, and it certainly would lend a lot of support to the growing number of voices who say that this material cannot be worked with safely, and a ban is the only answer.
And Katie, just on a final point, how widely known is the issue in California itself?
Well, one of the key problems really with this is that many tradesmen working with this material do not understand that they are being put at risk. It is not as widely known, many doctors say, as it should be, because the disease was traditionally thought of as a kind of, it's a forgotten workplace disease, really. It was popular. It was very common in miners between the 1920s and the 1950s. It's basically been forgotten about as a workplace disease, which means that it's often misdiagnosed, and it can sometimes be years before symptoms actually come to the fore. Many workers end up contracting this, and they just don't know they have it. So that is one of the key problems, really, with this disease.
Katie Brownfield with the latest there from Los Angeles. Katie, thank you. And that is it for this evening. The show will be back on Tuesday. Coming up next, it's The Wrap with Anna Botting. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Good night.